Good afternoon, and welcome to the Aduro Clean Technologies Fireside Chat. I am joined today by Ofer Vicus, CEO and co-founder, Mena Beshay, CFO, and Eric Appelman, Chief Revenue Officer. Mena, I understand you're a bit sick today. We especially appreciate you joining us while you're feeling under the weather. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that statements made during today's conference call may be deemed forward-looking within the meaning of the Safe Harbor of the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act of 1995, and actual results may differ materially due to a variety of risks, uncertainties, and other factors. For a detailed discussion of some of the ongoing risks and uncertainties in the company's business, I refer you to our investor presentation referenced this evening and filed with the SEC on Form 8-K, as well as the company's reports filed periodically with the SEC. The company disclaims any intention or obligation to update or revise any forward-looking statements, whether as a result of new information, future events, or otherwise, unless otherwise required by law. I want to thank everyone for joining our call today. We're going to be discussing several interesting topics, including an update on the HCT pilot plant, which I'm very excited for. At the conclusion of our call, we'll have a Q&A session. If we do not get to your question within the time frame allotted for this afternoon's call, please email our team at aduro@kcsa.com. Please note, this call is being recorded and will be released on Thursday, January 23rd, 2025. The recording will be available on the company's investor relations website at the conclusion of this call. Before we get into the details of the recently released update on the company's HCT pilot plant, I wanted to give Ofer an opportunity to provide a brief overview on the company. Ofer, can you tell us a little bit about Aduro and its innovative hydrochemolytic technology?
Certainly. Hi, Jack. Thank you very much for having us, and hello to our current investors and new investors. And thank you for spending the time and hoping this will be a valuable call for you through your decision-making process. What is Aduro and what is it that we have developed? Well, Aduro has developed a new chemical technology platform. We basically break down molecules, large molecules that worth sometimes they consider to be waste, and sometimes it just has a low value. And we turn them into maybe smaller molecules that adds or worth a little bit more than that. The process is very novel in comparison to the other technologies that are out there in the market, and I'll speak a little bit about that. And there is significant environmental benefit and economical benefit that the technology represents. There's a strong potential there. The company has become public in 2021, and we've been uplisted first to the Nasdaq on November 2024, just recently, right now. And how do we operate, Jack? Basically, just a few words about how the technology operates and what is it in comparison to the existing technologies. Well, I'll start with the existing technologies that you see here. For many, many years, the main approach to break molecules, we called it pyrolysis and thermolysis. It's basically a heat-based motivated approach where you heat and crack molecules. And when you break things apart, there is some penalties to pay around. And simply saying, if it's a heat-based and where you have a lot of different type of chemical components inside, they react differently to the process. And your way to fix it is basically on two things. Either you take a lot of the same material, or you have to do a lot of sorting, which is increase the capital cost of the technology. And Jack, all the companies that you see on this slide on the left represent the same code. They are different a little bit, but they share the same kind of a code. This technology or approach has been evolved over many years. It's already 70 years since it's first introduced. And for the first time, Aduro developed and represent a new approach. Our approach basically involves specific chemistry which break specific areas. We call it the carbon-carbon bonds that we're breaking. And we do that with a very simple catalyst, and we do that with a very low-cost chemical agent. The net result, Jack, is that we're breaking some of the chemical limitation that those companies has. And for that reason, we now can turn into a stronger economical progress or benefit that we do. And just to give you an idea, in general, our approach, the chemolysis, operate at a low a low energy mode. We are taking a little bit more contaminated material. Our yield is higher, and the value of the feedstock that we are creating, the value of the final product that we are creating is also higher. So, and the system is relatively small, so it can be scaled up. It is modular. So that gives a high advantage in compared to many of the other technologies, because basically, if you're chemically limited and you have to aggregate a lot of the same material, you kind of talk about centralized large location, where with the Aduro approach, you are now looking at providing configured solution to an area. This is a strong, strong benefit. And I invite both Mena and Eric to join and add if I miss anything through that conversation. So if we confirm, Jack, that this technology has significant advantages in compared to the others, during the last a few years, we've been working very hard to show our investors how we're moving it in the path to commercialization. And for that reason, we've been very, very busy in the last 2, 3 years, moving on different areas, all of them to provide basically three main, I'll say, goals for the company. The first was basically to make sure that we are de-risking the process. The second was to create opportunity for the company. And the third was to make sure that investors that see us see that we are making progress through the move of the commercialization, the path of the commercialization. And if, Jack, you moved to the next slide, I can take you through some of the goals that we've been doing, thank you, over the last few years. So every year, we have set certain goals that do exactly what I just told you. Either we create some opportunities, either we de-risk the company, or either we make sure that we are moving forward and advancing. This is very important for the company as we move in the commercialization path, but also very important to the investors, because, Jack, this is basically a tool to investors to kind of judge and see how we're making progress. We literally put our technology out there, we introduce it to customers, we build this communication structure to show investors how we are talking about it, and we allow investor to look in and to judge how we're doing it. And so for 2025 goal a year, and this is really, we feel, is a year of a turn for the company. It's a very important year for the company. It's the first time that we are coming with the design of a pilot, of a real pilot that takes real material, real waste, and turn it into a real product. And we want to commission it in early of Q3. We also want to move forward and complete the design for, scale demonstration plant. And we want to move later, and we have several companies that are looking at what we've been doing, and we build for those customers what we call a program that is called a customer engagement program, and I will speak a little bit about it in a minute. And last item is that we expand our intellectual property. And so investors can judge based on our progress where we are in each stage. And for example, if this year we will do the design and we'll build the pilot, that is definitely moving forward of the company. If we are adding more customers into it, we definitely create some more opportunities. And if we increase our patents portfolio and we build on that, we definitely helped de-risk the company and create more opportunities for the company. So this is how we are working. And this is in line with every year goals that are out there. Basically, in 2024, we've done the same. We had some 3 goals that the investors could look at and could judge, and we reported on those goals. And within our progress, investors get to see if they know nothing about the technology or the company, they could judge whether we are making good and advancing the technology. With that, I'd like to say one last word about how do we approach our customers, because the customers that we're talking to normally, Jack, are really large, heavy petrochemical customers, and they have to make really sometimes very expensive decisions. In our case, anything between 20, 30 to sometimes $100 million. And so for them to be introduced for the first time for a technology, we basically created a program to, on one hand, to introduce them to the technology, to gain the confidence, and then to move them and become collaborators. But on the other hand, to allow them to customize and help us develop the technologies. The program is called Customer Engagement. This is a customer engagement program, and it's divided into 3 stages. The first stage, basically, those players are sitting on the bench and we sell data. And both Eric joined with me, and Mena could talk a little bit about that. In the second phase, what we want to do is take those customers and turn them into a collaborator where they're moving from the bench and now contributing and customizing a solution, but also helping us. And this is maybe a bit larger deal. And then the last one is the commercialization. And if we do that, Jack, investors can see that if we had, let's say, 5 paying customers on just selling data on evaluation, and now we're adding another one on collaboration, the investors knows that we have a better chance and high secured chance to come into commercialization. And so we put that program out there for the players, for the customers, because they have to make really expensive decisions. And this is the crawl, walk, run. And also by us doing it, we increase the pipeline of potential customers. But also it is a tool for the investors to judge us. With that, and unless you have any further questions, I'll turn back maybe to Eric to continue and discuss a little bit more about it.
Thank you, Ofer, for providing such a comprehensive overview of Aduro and our innovative hydrochemolytic technology. Eric, could you now walk us through some key updates in the chemical recycling market, the technical development of our platform, and how Aduro is positioned to capitalize on these trends?
Yes, sure. Thank you for that. Maybe a first thing that I would like to bring to the limelight is what a colossal opportunity we are looking at. The world makes every year it's the weight of all the human beings combined as plastics, which is hard to imagine. And so for the 3 of us, they're probably making like 500 pounds of plastics. And about half of that is polyolefin, polyethylene, polypropylene, which we all see every day in the packaging that we have for our food. It's a waste stream that circulates quite quickly. It takes literally a couple of weeks before it ends up at a dump somewhere. And this is the sort of thing that we tackle to convert back to the loop, back into a feedstock. And if I allow for a little bit of loss of material that is not collected and a little bit of a loss in the processing, and of course there is a little bit of a loss for things that find another destination. But if you add that all up, you're coming around to a potential output of well north of 100 million tons a year. And that is precisely where we have pinned our estimation of the accessible market, which is worth about 120 billion. Well, that is, of course, a nice and ambitious target, but it shows pretty much that the sky is the limit if you manage to solve that. Because let's make it for sure, everybody would like to deal with plastic waste and not seeing it end up in the environment or as microplastics in your food or whatever else. So I think that is an important thing, and we are onto something big. Big development for us is, of course, and Ofer, you already referred to it, that we are now going to enter in piloting. Piloting is in the chemical industry jargon is an essential step to bring a commercial process to maturity. You spend your time in the lab, then you go to the pilot plant where you have the first mock-up of a commercial process, and where you're going to play and say, okay, maybe I do my piping a bit here and piping a bit there to arrive at a final design, and that takes a little bit. You also do it typically on a smallish scale, and you are not generating any revenue with it. There will be customers that can take sample stock from it. So as such, it is already a step on the commercial roadway. And the step after that, because this year is very much about the pilot, building it, commissioning it, starting to run it. After that, we go into a commercial demonstration type of thing. And what I mean by that, it is operating at a commercial scale. It is the first time you build it. That is why it is a demonstration. It will have a volume that is sufficient to already have commercial sales, generate revenue and profit. But it is still something that people will look at. It says, how does it work? How does it go? And then people will start to ship, hey, here is my waste. Can you try it for a while? Can you see where it processes as expected? And that is, of course, a situation that you already generate revenue and a stepping stone to the final situation where you will sell out licenses or where you build second plants, third plants, fourth plants of yourself. So a major step on that road. Now, if we look around what is happening in the world of recycling, this is, of course, a dynamic world. And I would say what I see happening around me now is that the regulatory environment is starting to become much more favorable. Give you a couple of examples. The world is now adopting this extended producer responsibility principle, where people that put plastic in the market as a shampoo bottle or as a wrap around something are going to pay for dealing with it. And we see it already in many countries. For every ton of plastic that is put into the market in whatever shape or form, an amount of money has to be put into a public institution or something like that. And that will then make sure that the stuff is collected, that it is separated, and that it is sent to the best possible outlet. Very important step, because that starts to pay for the back end. Another thing that we see coming is that governments start to regulate that any new article has to contain a certain amount of recycled material. That is very important as well, because that means in the end of the day that everybody in the chain, and especially those people that produce those plastics in the first place, have to secure a circular carbon. They have to find it. And that means that they will come to the likes of us and say, do you have a way for me to get waste that I collect into a meaningful form? Very important step. The other thing is, and that is relatively new, is we are going to see a situation that so-called chemically recycled plastic, which is plastic that we have collected, but that we have subsequently broken down to the elemental building blocks to make a brand new plastic, that is going to be counted as recycling as well. So not only the plastic that we collect and we remelt and then cast into a new shape, but also the plastic that we take all the way back to the raw material stage. Now, that is very important because that plays in our hands. And it is also necessary because most plastic that we collect, as you can imagine, is pretty dirty. It's pretty mixed, it's pretty messy, and you cannot easily make a new bottle from an old bottle because there is stuff on it. So that is what we see happening, and that is all very, very positive, and you see it in different countries in the world in different shapes or forms. On the other hand, we also see that this work is challenged, and especially by virgin plastic from petrochemical sources being available at extremely low prices. And that I find a normal thing. Yeah, of course, there is a market outside that you have to compete with, and you will have to answer and say, well, can I actually offer this at competing prices? And that is where some of the recycling players have answers to give that they can't. What is very important is that you cannot pay for recycling and circularity with good intentions. You should be able to pay for it with honest dollars. And that is what we are actually very well positioned for. And there's one question that is coming up a little bit later about the financial merit of our technology. But if I just try to summarize already what is so good about our technology, it is that on one hand, we can take substantially more dirty and more available for that reason feedstock and cheaper for that feedstock. Then we run it through our process, and then we produce a product that is considerably better than alternatives. And it will not require typical after treatment that is a lot more expensive. To make it even better, while it is running to our machine, we do not lose as much of that carbon that we try to recycle on the way due to useless side streams, and we use less energy. So I think that on one hand, this favorable trend on the regulatory side, and the other side, the honest financial pressure that is now felt by the people that do recycling is going to play in our hands. Because among chemical recyclers, we do have this technology that has the better financial foundation under it.
Thank you, Eric. Mena, last week the Aduro team celebrated its recent IPO and listing on the Nasdaq by ringing the closing bell. Can you share a little bit about that experience and comment on the capital market strategy that you have deployed over the last year?
Thank you, Jack. Yeah, ringing the bell, the Nasdaq closing bell, was a momentous occasion for Aduro. It symbolized our transition into a new growth phase and enhancing our visibility within the global investment community. And I want to say, like, really standing alongside our dedicated team and witnessing Aduro's name illuminated on the Nasdaq tower was both humbling and exciting. I couldn't have a better bunch of people around me. You can see in this picture where our emotions are kind of showing on our faces for sure. I wanted to add also, with regards to our capital market strategy, it's been focused on four main goals, right? So number one, of course, expanding our shareholder base. So by actively engaging with both retail and institutional investors through transparent communication, webinars, conferences, we aim to attract long-term investors who share our vision. And we've been very careful to really focus on that element. We try to tell our story as transparently and as clearly as we possibly can, so the investors that join on board really have the same vision and understanding of how the story will be unfolding over the upcoming months and years. We're really building something transformational here. So it's critical that the understanding is quite common between us and our investor base. Number two, achieving a top-tier listing. Needless to say, this has been achieved with our Nasdaq listing, which not only enhances our visibility, but also provides access to global investors. And that's something that we found challenging in the past, being a CSE listed company. We had so many meetings, really, with European investors, with fund managers across the border in the US, all of whom were very much challenged to buy the stock on the CSE. So by being on a top-tier listing on the Nasdaq, we've unlocked quite a bit of potential there in unlocking quite a bit of access to our investor base that really liked the story but was unable to really join on board and buy the stock. Number three is a strategic capital deployment. Since our IPO in April 2021, and I think Ofer's kind of touched base on this a little bit, we've been very disciplined in both raising and utilizing our capital. Notably, all our funding rounds have been up rounds, reflecting a strong market confidence in our commitment to minimizing dilution. And number four is unlocking valuation growth. And I know this is something that Ofer is very careful to explain as well. Progress is critical to our investors. Showing that we're hitting our milestones, that we're on track, is also very critical. So achieving key milestones such as filing new patents, adding to our potential TAM, announcing new customers, our progress made on the pilot and our scale-up program, all of which has driven valuation growth, providing tangible evidence of our progress to our shareholders. So those are really the critical 4 points. Sorry, Ofer, were you going to say something?
No, if you complete, I just had some more comments, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to say that the closing bell ceremony highlighted Aduro's readiness to seize global opportunities and connect with a broader investor base. As we look ahead, we remain very focused on transparency, disciplined capital allocation, and delivering sustained value to our shareholders. So I'll stop it there and pass it on to Ofer for final comments.
No final comments at all, just part of the discussion. To start with, something I missed at the beginning is a little bit about the applications that we're doing. So Aduro is not one trick pony. It's basically we have a chemical recycling approach. We have some solutions that we're building towards Bitumen, and this is the genesis of where we've been starting. And there are other solutions that are out there that we are developing. One of them is towards the renewable oil. And so the addressable market, the total addressable market of that company is now north to $200 billion. So quite a lot. And Eric just mentioned a little bit in his discussion about the addressable market for the plastic. The other item that I think is important to mention to investors that evaluate the company, because we want them to see how we're making progress. We basically are very much sensitive to the revenue. We want to see revenue as sooner than later. And for that reason, not just that we came with this approach of a crawl, walk, run towards the customers, the bench approach, the technology evaluation, and then the collaboration. But internally, we are working on systems that we call it from simple to complex. So there is an aggressive work to bring as close as near to a commercial system from our simplest applications that constitute maybe a smaller scale application, but they could generate revenue potentially sooner than the more complex demand by those Fortune 500 that are looking for material that is very contaminated and and eventually a much larger value proposition, basically. But for the company, for investors to look at, we are working basically one after the other. So while we are building solution to the simple applications, and this is what we've been doing now with the pilot that we're building, represent that intention and our statement towards finishing a commercial design by the end of this year represent the same concept. In parallel or on top of that, we are building our understanding to the more complex application. And last item that is related to that, Jack, I want to say that every customer that is working or considering working with us, we consider them as basically a place where you can grow with them. In other words, if they start with a smaller unit and they test it and they like it, they can buy several others based on their demands and needs. So it gives them some flexibility. It gives them some flexibility in the decision-making process. So overall, for investors, it's really, really important to see that not just that we're making progress on one front, we're making progress on range of front to establish this, I'll say, advance the company in different areas so we could move forward in a secure way. And I invite Eric or Mena to add to this if they feel they need.
No, I thank you for that, Ofer. Really great points there. And I think given the amount of attention that we spend and time, of course, that we spend talking about plastic waste, sometimes our viewership or shareholders or stakeholders, sometimes they forget the fact that we have multiple applications, multiple solutions. We are a technology company at heart, and we have a tremendous team that is innovating nonstop. And that is a critical component that's going to add tremendous value in our future to the company and the shareholders, of course. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Ofer. Thank you, Mena. And thank you, Eric, for your time today. We will now move to the Q&A portion of the Fireside Chat. Our first question, Eric, could you explain the relative cost and the potential output for a commercial HCT plant versus pyrolysis?
Yeah, thank you. This is, of course, the million-dollar question in multiple senses. I think what we must be aware of, and what I already alluded to, is that we have an ability to take more dirty feedstocks in and to kick out a better product. So I would like to look at that piece that starts at a garbage bin and that ends at a cracker, which is where the chemical companies stuff our stuff. To begin with, in a conventional plant like a pyrolysis plant, you are going to have to do some pre-treatment if the garbage comes in, because it is not so forgiving towards certain contaminants. That means you have to have a sorting operation, that you will be generating a reject stream that have to find a home for, that you will have personnel to run that thing, CapEx and OpEx. On the back end, the product that is coming out of a pyrolysis unit or a similar unit will need considerable after treatment. And I will save you the technical background, but you do have to subject it to a process called hydrotreating. That is a substantial chemical operation which uses expensive auxiliary chemicals, catalysts. It needs hydrogen. And by the way, this hydrogen doesn't come from the air. You have to make that as well. So very realistically, a normal pyrolysis oil will have to go through one more factory, and that one more factory needs another factory to produce that hydrogen. So post-treatment and after-treatment, CapEx and OpEx, and in principle, that is not going to be required when you apply our process. Then back to our process, which is in between. I guess that in terms of pots and pans, maybe similar to a pyrolysis plant. But what is really different is that while passing through a typical pyrolysis plant, you will lose some material because the temperature is high, you will overcorrect, you make some gas, you make some soot, you make some char, and we don't have that loss. That loss is a lot less, and that means that we carry over more of the good matter from the beginning to the end. And they're not negligible at all. Because we are operating at milder conditions, means lower temperatures, you need less energy to run the process. So if you then come to that train and you say, I started my garbage truck and I end up with my cracker installation, you will save CapEx and OpEx in the pre-treatment. You will also save CapEx and OpEx in the post-treatment. And in between, in the very process itself, we'll have less losses and less energy. And I think that is going to bring chemical recycling to an area where it is going to be financially a very healthy business to be in.
Thank you, Eric. Moving on to our second question. Ofer, can you provide some information about the testing process that this multi-billion-dollar companies undergo and the timelines associated with that?
Yeah, for sure. When we think about the testing process, I'd like to say that we are thinking about the customers that has to make multi-million-dollar decisions over years, first and foremost. So this is not an easy decision for them. And if they were aware for many years on one approach, just coming back and understanding or realizing that just coming back and turning into another approach, it just doesn't happen that way. You have to give them some time to feel confidence, and then you have to give them some time to customize, and then you have to give them some time to understand how it works. This is all speaks to the benefit of the technology, because if it's small and agile and have some benefits there that they can work with, then you give them more options than the others. So you recover, over the years that they can see different opportunities and they need that time. I'd like to say that this is equally important when we design this program to the investors, because it's not just about what we show the customers, it's about how investors can evaluate our progress. And the customer and the relation with the customers is very, very important. So the design of the program is in 3 stages. The first stage called the technology evaluation, the second stage is called collaboration, and the last stage is commercialization. And the technology evaluation can be, we basically selling data. It can be anywhere between a month, 2 months to almost 2 years. And this is very much depend on the customer. So we let the customer dictate the program. The customers sometimes come with different needs. And if Shell is asking you questions, you basically don't argue. You ask what time and when I can answer you for those questions. And the same with the others. So that is the general concept. And as for the length of time right now, all of them are, apart from Total, are in the evaluation stage. We are have been working with the Game Changer, with Shell, and I think Upenor has just joined recently, and there are several others that are confidential, and they're all at the stage of evaluation. In other words, we sell them data, and they look at this data and continue and ask questions about that data. And at some point of time, when they feel confident, it is our intention and our aim, and they know it, to turn them into collaborators. And a collaborator agreement could take anywhere between, let's say, a few months to even more than a year or 2 years' time. It's really, again, dictated by the customer. So you can see, Jack, that first, we cater to bring solution to the customer, to configure solution to the customer, to make the customer comfortable with what we've been doing. And they have a lot of questions because they need to make a lot of decisions about it. And we really don't push them one way or the other. We want to be there to provide and build with them those solutions. But I hope this gives you some overview of how we are operating. We also don't give exclusivity, which is an important factor to think about. We respect and want to work with all the customers that work with us, but we know from experience and from past, experience of other companies, that once you start this road of exclusivity, then it comes with all kind of constraints that you don't want to, be on you or burden yourself on you today. And that's also a benefit that I think investors should consider as well, because if you don't give exclusivity and you remain on your path, you basically increase the amount of organizations that will look at you as things will expand and grow. And of course, you better want to work with more than one or two companies when you're becoming a larger and a larger organization.
Thank you. Many of the questions that we received from investors surrounded the Shell Game Changer program.
Yeah.
Now that the 2-year mark is passed with that engagement, when do you think that investors could expect to learn more?
Yeah, that's another great question, but it falls back on the the relationship that we're building. So I'd like to say first that the Game Changer program is a program that initially meant to do a fast fail. And as Eric said, we have not yet failed in the program. So we are remain in discussion, and we're very proud to answer to Shell's answers. Saying that, there is a confidential agreement between us and Shell, and so we have to let Shell dictate a little bit of those terms, and this is based on the way they are getting satisfaction or better understanding of the answers that we give them. Part of it sometimes we can communicate, and I think we communicate some of it on the halfway of the program. So we're definitely, move from that point forward, but we cannot share information until Shell will basically allow us. And if you remember, in the previous answer, I mentioned, we consider Shell to be a technology evaluator, and we consider others to be on the same stage. And we just allow them to ask as much as questions as they have for them to feel comfortable, because the decisions that they need to make later are not easy decisions. We're talking about, if I give some visuals here, this thing could go from contracts, from multi-million dollars contract to hundreds of millions of dollars of contracts. So there is a lot of understanding that needs to come forward, and that's how we conduct ourselves.
Got it. Understood. And Eric, could you speak a little bit to the Total collaboration? How is that progressing? And what's the likelihood of the integration of HCT into their refining process?
The collaboration with Total is an enormously enjoying experience. And what you see here is that we have two companies that are genuinely working very intensely together in a continuous dialogue to bring this forward. That is probably the biggest and the most important thing of that customer engagement program. Because of course we do not know all the ins and outs of oil refining and naphtha cracking and plastic manufacturing and all that. And that is what we find all the time. We perform our data, we present our data, we get the feedback, we iterate our way to what is the best set of conditions to run our plant, how do we measure things. And that is what I thoroughly enjoy, but which is also crucial for our company. If you want to reach the goal, you better know where it is. And that is where this collaboration and this truly candid exchange of things helps us with. And we do know where we have to go. And I know things that I did not know when I started working with them. And I can say the same about Shell, and I can say the same about the many other companies. At this moment, we have just completed a full round of sampling to a bunch of customers. Interesting things without betraying any secret. They all said, yeah, we can buy this stuff. And at the same time, you also learn, okay, by the way, if you can tweak that and tweak that, that is what it is. This is about combining two worlds, and the best way to combine two worlds is to have a dialogue rather than withdraw and try to invent everything in the house. I'm a very strong supporter of this customer engagement for precisely this reason.
Jack, just to add on Eric's points here, I feel, looking at the discussion, first of all, we did not want to wake up 5 years ahead, knowing that we build a small, an old system, to a new market, to a very dynamic market. And so, putting the process out there at those stages is really a big benefit because it basically allows us to adjust online with the demands and with the customers. And second, just from the things that I see, and Eric, you correct me if I'm wrong, some of the most critical elements to the company, even after those many years of development, as a feedback came from those collaborations. So we're super, super happy and excited with that. But we need to remember that we need to give them the time to dictate some of those. They need their time. And so it is our intention to move them, but it's basically each company has its own program. And we are coming into that program and we customize it to our needs and we let them dictate, when and where they feel comfortable. But we have more than one, and we will always keep several on the fire. And that is because, again, we want to make sure that as we move forward and make progress, we increase the pipeline of potential organization that we can work with.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Another question that came in from our investors had to do with Bitumen. What is the roadmap for the Bitumen upgrade, and are you planning to build an R3 plant for that in the future? Maybe Eric, can you speak to that?
Get that done? Yeah, I agree. Yeah, bitumen is of course a little bit where we started out with. Yeah, that is also a molecule the size of your house table that has to be broken up to make it transportable and processable. And that is also where we made the discovery that our HCT technology is able to do that in a very clever way. It's a very complex system, also because the dynamics are very different. If you're talking about waste, you're probably talking about a feedstock that is spread out evenly among populated areas. With bitumen, for instance, in Alberta, you're talking about an enormous mountain of bitumen that is available in the cold Arctic of semi-Arctic of northern Alberta. So the dynamics are different. But I'm very, very happy to say that we're making a lot of progress there. It is a lot of work. We are making also progress with multiple partners here. And yes, this will, like I described before, it will have to progress from the laboratory into the semi-pilots that we already have, into a genuine pilot where you are making some choices about the type of equipment that you're going to deploy on a commercial setup. And then after that, a demonstration scale, precisely the same. But very happy to tell that everybody that this track is continuing and it still holds an enormous amount of promise.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, we have time for about one more question from our investors. Mena, maybe you can take this one. In light of the increased number of customer engagements, including the collaboration with Total Energies, why isn't revenue increasing quarter over quarter? Can you talk to this a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's it's a really good question. It's important to, sorry, my bad here. It's important to recognize that, revenue recognition follows very strict criteria, right? So any revenue recognized in a specific quarter is driven by completing certain milestones and the delivery of data. Additionally, progress made on any customer engagement program depends on multiple factors. It's not isolated with regards to everything else that we're doing. So some of the factors include balancing internal resources between the technology scale-up, the commercialization program, and the ongoing experimentation and analysis program. As you all well aware, we're in the early stages of the pilot build out and commissioning that we're planning on for Q3. So that took a little bit more attention compared to our customer engagement work in the past couple of quarters. So it's a balancing act. We can only recognize revenue once we hit that milestone, once we deliver that data, and it's accepted by the customer. That is one of the criteria that we use for recognizing revenue. But it's also critical to understand that the customer engagement revenue is not meant to be a material source of revenue. It's more of a show of commitment by organizations that want to work with Aduro. It also ignores a significant component of our customer engagement, which is in-kind contribution. I know Eric touched base on this, Ofer touched base on this. This includes technical expertise, market intelligence, facilities, raw material provided, all of which reduce our costs, but aren't reflected in terms of revenue. So as our engagement with Total is very significant, there's a whole team on the Total side that is engaging with our data, is engaging with our team, and it's providing back and forth analysis and thought process, market analytics. So it's pretty critical and significant amount of work that happens on both sides of that equation. But revenue, of course, is driven by different criteria. So I just wanted to conclude by saying that these relationships are critical milestones in advancing our commercialization roadmap with the real revenue potential to be realized post-commercialization. So nonetheless, we love getting non-dilutive funding through this CEP program, but I don't want our shareholder base to look at this in a linear fashion. Some quarters are going to be higher, some quarters are going to be lower, but the real attention should be spent on who we're engaging with and how things are progressing, which in our side of things are going very well. So that is what kind of the focus that we take as a company, and I think our shareholders need to look at it in that way as well.
Thank you, Mena. And thank you again, Ofer, Mena, and Eric for your time today. This concludes today's Fireside Chat. Thank you to all of our investors for watching. If you have further questions about Aduro that we're not able to address during the call, please contact us at aduro@kcsa.com.